What was that?
Will, something's wrong.
Sam.
Will, what?
Watched a dystopian sci-fi thriller on Netflix the other day. It's called How It Ends, and it stars Forrest Whitaker and Theo James, and Grace Dove is another one of the stars. It's directed by David M. Rosenthal, and this is another one of those end-of-the-world type experiences, and it starts off in Chicago, and we see this young couple kind of celebrating the idea that they're going to have a baby, and then there's a dinner with Dad, played by Forrest Whitaker, that doesn't go so well, and then all kinds of hell starts to break loose. We see the connection disrupted between the FaceTime chat that's happening between Theo and his wife, and all of a sudden it feels like the end of the world is happening. Flights get canceled, and everybody's kind of trying to figure out how they're going to get to where they got to go, and cars almost get hijacked by people with weapons. And then Theo James finds his way back to Forrest Whitaker, and they basically go on a road trip to go and find Theo James's wife, who is in Seattle. And there's a lot of hell breaking loose from out west, and so these guys get into a car, and then they drive, and they pass all kinds of military folks that sort of say, no, you can't go this way, it's only residents only. They find some corrupt police folks along the way, and people, it's like the typical scenario. It's the people are the worst when all hell breaks loose. It's not so much that you have to fear the natural sort of things that are happening or the unnatural things that are happening. It's how you have to deal with the people and how they're going to react to it. And so there's lots of these conflicts along the way on this pretty solidly built road experience. And that's the most impressive part of this movie, is that it does actually take us on a bit of a ride. We go and we see these different parts of America. It looks like they shot some pretty cool establishing pieces in Chicago, and most of the cinematography is pretty solid. And then also what I was impressed with is that they didn't really scrimp on the effects that are in this movie. They don't overdo it, and we don't see tons of it, and it doesn't feel like it's a $200 million end of the world, blockbuster kind of deal. It's not San Andreas, but there are some pretty elaborate and cool looking special effects in this, and there are also some pretty long stretches of us sort of taking this road trip, and I thought that was cool. Along the way, they meet up with Grace Dove, who plays this mechanic that helps them fix their car, and then she goes along because Forrest Whitaker smartly says, look, let's bring this mechanic in case there's any problems along the way. And of course, there are some big confrontations, and people get hurt, and people get killed, that's about as much of the movie as I'm going to spoil.
I only have one question for you. Are you coming with me?
I think one of the tough things with a movie of this scale is figuring out how to end it, and the ambiguous kind of nature of the way that this thing ends is not satisfying at all. So you get to this big conclusion, and you start to unravel the mysteries, because that's another thing that Rosenthal has really done here, is he doesn't really reveal too much about why this is happening, and you're kind of left to your own devices to kind of imagine what the worst case scenario is. We're hearing reports of earthquakes, and there's electronic interference, and we see fighter jets and tanks and stuff like that racing to areas, but we don't really know what the hell is going on. And I like that. I like that the mystery is kind of, presented like that. It almost brought back memories of Spielberg's mostly incredible War of the Worlds movie, but this is definitely not at that scale, so don't get me wrong there.
1, 2, 3.
I was pleasantly surprised. I didn't love this movie. I didn't think that it was utter trash. I don't think that this is a disposable experience on Netflix. And some of the movies do tend to be. But again, it is an underwhelming conclusion, and that really kind of leaves you going meh at the end of it, which is too bad, because there's some solid work in the first couple of acts of this film, and I applaud this. Like when you talk about the end of the world, we saw movies like Signs, which did it so poorly, and I'm a fan of M. Night Shyamalan, but Signs was a really ineffective piece of movie making, because they talk about this massive world-changing event, and they kept it tiny and they kept it small, and every time you in the audience are thinking, well, they got the budget to build something big here. Why didn't they go off and show us you can't just run newsreel footage. You got to show us some stuff. And I was surprised that we do get to see that. We do get to see towns devastated. We do get to see carnage on roadways. I don't think it's to the scale of something like The Walking Dead, which has episode after episode to kind of just enhance the vision of its dystopian nightmare. But it's surprisingly well handled, that idea of this massive destruction in the 90 minutes that this movie has to play with. So I give kudos to the filmmakers for that, and to Netflix for ponying up the money in one way or another to make sure that that happened. I didn't hate this movie. I think it's all right. I'm going to give How It Ends a 6 out of 10.